In the old days, the telephone was still fashionable. And things like cell phones hadn't been invented yet. Their only basis is the voice of the person you are talking to on the phone. When he got off the phone, the 24-year-old man was smiling excitedly. And his phone pal girl on the phone is now his girlfriend. That he would imagine that it was long-haired and very beautiful because of her voice. In his opinion, her face resembled the girl's charming voice, even though he hadn't seen her yet. Because of the very beautiful voice of this woman. Any man who hears her will definitely fall in love with her. When the next day came, he immediately bought a nice outfit for his walk, because this time, when it got dark, he was going to meet Jennifer, his new girlfriend. Therefore, he quickly went to his friend to borrow a car for him to use. But then, he saw that he and his friends were drinking. His friend invited him to drink, to make the nervousness in his chest disappear. Because he will meet Jennifer. But Chris didn't realize that he was going to be late for his meeting with Jennifer. Chris is very confident that Jennifer will be attracted to his sports car. And when Chris noticed that he was close to their meeting place, he saw a very beautiful woman at the end of the corner standing. Chris was absolutely sure that it was Jennifer standing at the end of the corner. The boastful man showed his prowess, and he began to operate the car he was driving. And when something suddenly hit the front of the car, he hit the brakes immediately. Because of his fear. And his car suddenly died. He first looked around but he didn't see anyone. The last thing he noticed was the long hair waiting at the end of the corner. Then he slowly opened the door of his car. And suddenly blood splattered on the road and other equipment from the girl. And he was terrified. And he hurriedly closed the car door. There was trepidation in his question. His love for Jennifer was replaced by cowardice. He shakily put the key in the hole of his car. He heard bones crunching under his car. When he arrived at his house, he immediately cleaned his friend's car. And he saw a handkerchief. But there was blood, and an embroidered name Jennifer. That was hanging under his car. Because of his collision with the person. Chris proved that the person he bumped into was Jennifer, his girlfriend. His chest heaved. When he entered his room, his phone suddenly rang. He could hardly move where he was standing. And he slowly picked up the phone.
Hello?
He felt the one on the other line of the phone. And later, he suddenly heard someone crying. Woman. The woman answered.
Why did you take it from me?
He was shocked. And he suddenly threw the phone away. Because he could hear Jennifer. Chris unplugged the phone. Then he muttered in his room. Chris just sat down, and scared. Until he didn't realize that he was slowly falling asleep. And a few hours later, the phone suddenly rang. Chris was very surprised.
How come the phone rings?
Because I unplugged it.
he said to himself. The phone rang all night. Even though he put his hands over his ears. When the next day came, he went to his bathroom. He washed his whole body. It seemed as if he wanted to wash away his sin. At noon, the police came to his house, knocked on his door, and he felt that he was cowering and afraid of what was going to happen to him. Suddenly, he knelt down in front of them and cried. He was taken to the precinct and presented to the lieutenant.
Are you Chris, sir?
Chris answered.
Yes.
Someone said, and saw the plate of the car you used, that you were the one who crashed into the victim.
The lieutenant said, he is ready to accept the punishment that will be given to him for his sin. Chris was about to ask for forgiveness for his sin, but the lieutenant preceded him to speak.
Congratulate you, Chris, because you have caught the long-wanted murderer, and you caught the wanted criminal. And because of that, you have a reward of 50,000 pesos.
He shook his hand in greeting. Chris stopped crying because of the lieutenant's words. He couldn't believe that he thought he would face a case because of his crime. Because of the lieutenant's words, he breathed a sigh of relief and became complacent.
But unfortunately, he had another victim before you finally crashed into him, and his victim was named Jennifer. He robbed, raped, and left the victim dead.
The lieutenant said. Chris couldn't believe what he had heard. He couldn't fully understand himself. He felt so angry in his chest. Because the victim here was his girlfriend, Jennifer. Chris didn't realize that there were tears in his eyes, brought by his combined pity for Jennifer and anger for the suspect. The lieutenant continued to congratulate him, but he was no longer in the right mood. He no longer understood what was being said to him. Many questions popped into his mind.
Why her?
Chris said in his mind. And that night, there was a woman standing at the end of the corner, who witnessed the collision with the long-wanted criminal. And not Jennifer. In the following days, Chris asked for information about the last victim of the suspect. Chris decided to visit Jennifer's funeral home because he was always interrupted on the phone whenever it got dark. This is the opportunity, and the first time, to see his girlfriend Jennifer, who is no longer alive. When Chris arrived at the funeral home, he saw that everyone was wearing white, and he doesn't know anyone. He went to the table, where the guests signed, and next to it was the donation box. He knows what he did to Jennifer, because he thought Jennifer was the one he bumped into. That's why he was cowardly in those times. Chris decided to donate all the 50,000 he received as compensation for his cowardice at a time when she needed him. He slowly walked closer to his lover's coffin. He couldn't hold back the pain he felt in his chest, as if it would explode with sadness. Because he has love for this girl. He leaned over a man standing in front of the coffin. He peered at the person in the coffin. Long hair and grey hair. Very far from what he expected to look like. Chris wondered if he entered the right room. He looked around. And he noticed a man again. He looked at the man first. Chris noticed that he seemed to have a look of surprise on his face. And he seems to think they are almost the same age. After a few moments, another man came to them. And he said,
Are you my wife's friend?
He said. The three of them looked at each other at the same time. They were all Jennifer's phone pals. After he got home from Jennifer's funeral home, He went to his room in a daze. His mind seemed confused. He didn't know what was really going on true. And he wondered if he had put all the gratuity he got correctly. Because behind the beautiful and seductive voice is an old and family woman. He found himself lying on his bed with his hands under his head. His phone rang again. But he ignored it. While Chris was looking at his ceiling, he seemed to notice a shadow forming. And suddenly, a face took shape. Chris screamed and cursed out of fear.
"Don't bother me anymore, because I didn't kill you,"
Chris said. Chris was covered with a blanket. Chris doesn't know anything, because the person who is haunting him is the person he ran into. That night, Jennifer was waiting for Chris. There was a man beside him. The girl smiled at the man. She said,
"Are you Chris?"
The man, pretending to be Chris, nodded and took the girl to a dark place where nobody was there, where he would carry out his dark plan. Jennifer thinks that Chris is the one who committed a heinous crime against her. So why is Jennifer's soul no longer at peace? So why does Jennifer keep haunting Chris? If you like this story, please like and subscribe to my channel, and also hit the bell notification so you're always updated with new scary stories. If you have a suggestion or comment, just put it in the comment section below and I will answer. If you have a scary experience, just send it to creepydubtv@gmail.com. Maybe we can choose your story.